Hey guys, this is SK. I'm going to bring you a guide. It's going to be quite long, but I'm going to do my best to get through it as quickly as I can. So, to start off with, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the abilities, just in case you're new to the class. So, Thunder Shell, it's your basic attack. If you have the basic attack option selected in your options menu, then it'll just automatically cast it every time you're in combat. You can see it's casting the ability right now. Next ability up is Concussion Bomb. This is another filler, just like your Thunder Shell is. It should be used over Thunder Shell, but pretty much over nothing else. Oblivion Bomb, everybody knows Oblivion Bomb. You sit there and do huge damage, increased critical strike chance while you're in sniper mode. It's quite useful. It's your third strongest ability. I'm going to get into that in a second. So Grenade, decent damage. It's magic damage, so you can take that into consideration in PvP and PvE. It might be a little bit stronger than much of your other abilities if they have a lot of physical defense. It also knocks down for 3 seconds. The cooldown is 15 seconds, so in PvP I would save this ability personally for a situation where you can use the knockdown. PvE you can use it as a filler unless there's like ads or something you guys need to take care of. So your absolute strongest ability is Hellfire Salvo. So in pistol mode, over the course of 6 shots, it deals 2639 every second shot. So it would be 3 total instances of 2639. Of course, if you're, depending on your character, it's going to be a little different. You can press shift and see exactly what it's going to do. So 143.3% base physical attack plus however much you level it in stats, of course. It hits a maximum of 4 targets. In Cypher mode, that turns to 8. The important part is it puts you into a physical damage bonus state that increases damage by 20%. That's the most important part of this ability, which is what makes it the #1 on the priority list. There's some interesting stuff you can do with this ability. I'm going to put it, I'm going to show you guys exactly what I mean in a little bit. Helix Blade, incredible damage. Stack it up with everything else, and you can do some interesting stuff with Death Mark. It can also be used as an escape, or in PvE, let's say, there's a line attack the boss is using, you can't get out of it because sniper mode just trash, right, for the stamina regen. Helix Blade in a direction quickly to get out of it. Actually a really good skill. I would not prioritize this over Hellfire Salvo at all. If anything, you would use it first, cancel animation into Helix Blade if you absolutely have to do it. In PvP, this thing is not really useful. You're going to need it for a stun chain. Against good players, this is probably not going to do much damage. But against the newbie players, and for the first few weeks the game is actually released, it's going to be incredibly strong. People are going to complain about it on the forums a lot, I bet you. Deathmark is probably the best ability in the entire game. It applies a debuff to the target for 5 seconds, without cultivation of course, and it deals a flat damage whenever you cast a spell at it, and it's for each instance of the spell. So if I Helix Blade, for example, and deals damage every second for 5 seconds, it's a total of 5 hits. So 5 hits times however much damage the death mark does, however much you leveled it or improved it in any way, and quickly it adds up to a lot of extra damage in a raid environment. This is massive. This thing will absolutely melt any boss. It'll melt anyone in a PvP environment. Just imagine 100 people shooting a world boss on the world, and Deathmark comes up. It adds up real fast. Alright, next one is Focus Fire. Now the interesting thing about this is it only affects the Gunslinger's party and their puppets, okay? So if you have an entire raid group, only the first 5 people in that Gunslinger's group are going to gain the benefit from it. And their puppets, right? So there's some situations where you're going to want to spread out Gunslingers across all your different groups so that they gain the benefits from it. Or it's even possible that you're going to want to put all your Gunslingers into one group so that they all can cycle focused fire, and all their puppets gain the benefit. So it's up to the raid leader to decide, but it's actually quite interesting because it can add up being, it can add up to being some extra damage that you might have otherwise not have had. Last thing here real quick for the basics is mana armor. So this thing reduces obviously the effect of crowd control abilities on you, or gets rid of them entirely depending on what it is. So it lasts 5 seconds. Another huge thing for PvE that a lot of people don't know about is it reduces enmity, which is threat essentially. So a lot of tanks that I play with personally are unable to keep aggro, and pretty much every pug tank just can't. I'm the tank. I'm the tank. So mana armor will get rid of that effect. It can also be used beforehand in a PvE environment when you're going to get knocked down or something. Maybe the knockdown doesn't do a whole lot of damage, it's just more annoying than anything. Mana armor, and you can just sit right through and continue doing what you're doing. Sniper mode is pretty straightforward. It's just extra damage for reduced movement speed. Everybody knows what sniper mode is. Even if you don't play Gunslinger, you've seen him walking around, that waddling around takes like 3 hours to get anywhere. Huge, massive damage increase, but that movement hurts until 59, in which you can get cultivation points to remove the movement reduction, in which case the gunslinger would just want to stay in sniper mode pretty much permanently. There's like never a reason to leave sniper mode. Real quick, spider turret, PvP, this thing is absolutely worthless. It's not even worth casting it. Uh, it usually just casts a beam ability, and that thing can be sidestepped and accidentally dodged most of the time. In addition, it only takes 50% of your physical attack, and that's further reduced by the enemy player's resistances, so it ends up doing basically nothing. It's not worth casting the spell pretty much ever. Alright, moving into the special skills. I'm going to be a little bit more in-depth about it now. So first things first, best ability for your special skills are Deadeye Shot and Ferris Trap. So Deadeye Shot, real quick, does a bunch of damage, and what's special about it is Death Mark increases the damage by an additional 20%. So what ends up happening is, since this is a 10-second cooldown, and you're using this ability pretty much every single time after Hellfire Salvo is up, because you want that 20% additional bonus from Hellfire Salvo, right? So you're going to want a Deadeye Shot every single time you have that buff enabled. So what's going to end up happening is there's going to be situations where your Death Mark is off cooldown, and so is Deadeye Shot, and so is Hellfire Salvo. You're going to want to stack them. So the best way to stack it is, since Death Mark's duration is very low, you're going to want to Salvo, then Death Mark, then Deadeye Shot. Now, there's some interesting stuff that you can do with this, and I'm going to talk about it in just a second, but there's some combos that you can use to get a lot of instant value from this, alright? So, a combo idea, let me build some points here so that I can actually cast the spell. So the combo would be Hellfire Salvo, Death Mark, Deadeye Shot, but you can change it up a little bit by animation canceling Hellfire Salvo. If you jump or dodge, you still retain the buff, and the buff from Hellfire Salvo is applied the instant the spell is actually cast, not when the button's pressed, but when the spell actually activates. So it has a chanting time of 0.5 seconds. So if I jump before it's cast, I don't actually get the effect until I finish casting. So what I'm going to do is Hellfire Salvo, jump cancel into Death Mark, followed by Deadeye Shot, Oblivion Bomb, and Concussion Bomb. You can see what that looks like now. And what just happened is, in that entire duration, I was dealing damage with Death Mark, the bonus damage from Hellfire Salvo, Deadeye Shot improved by Death Mark and Hellfire Salvo, Oblivion Bomb improved by both, and Concussion Bomb improved by both. So what ends up happening is This leads to a DPS increase that not a lot of gunslingers are taking into account. Now, this situation where all these spells happening at the same time is not going to be very frequent. It's going to happen like once a fight. It's going to line up perfectly, and then the rest it won't. So it's worth holding on to Deathmark and Deadeye Shot for 3 or 4 seconds so that you can line up the combo. So for the most part, Hellfire Salvo should not be animation canceled unless you can do that specific combo. The only other time you'd want to do it is if you can only cast Deathmark, in which case you Hellfire Salvo the entire duration, Deathmark, and then Deadeye Shot. And it just leads to huge damage. If this happens in a PvP environment, that target's just gonna die, right? It doesn't matter, that target's just gonna straight up die. Last thing I want to talk about real quick is the mine. A lot of people seem to not know about the entire mine situation. They kind of throw it off their bar, and I'm not gonna lie, the first time I played with the bombs, I thought they were, completely terrible. The mines, I just threw it off my bar entirely. I thought it was worthless. But the mine is technically called a proximity mine, right? So it's very simple. Whenever something gets close to it, it explodes. Or you can send it out to explode automatically. However, you have two improvements: Vicious Dynamite and Freezing Dynamite. Technically, since there can only be one proximity mine out, Freezing Dynamite and Vicious Dynamite change the ability name. So Proximity Mine is no longer Proximity Mine. It is Freezing Dynamite or Vicious Dynamite, which means that you can place more than one down. You can have all three out if you want to, and you can all send them at the same target. So this leads to situations where before a boss fight starts, you can have all your gunslingers in your party or raid lay down traps, full buff, go in with all the debuffs, do a lot of instant damage, and it's essentially, 3 globals extra across all your gunslingers for extra damage. That's massive in a party or raid environment. Before the boss is even pulled, that's incredible. For PvP, before a match starts, or maybe the enemy is playing footsie with you or whatever, you can have all 3 traps down, go in. You do some garbage damage with the proximity mine. You can Vicious Dynamite for the knockdown, which is huge, and then Freezing Dynamite so that they can't heal, and when they get up, they're going to have a hard time getting out of the effect. So all 3 combined actually makes the ability pretty good. On its own, it's not good at all. The only other time you want to use the Proximity Mine is with Vicious Dynamite or Freezing Dynamite on its own, right? So Freezing Dynamite, obviously, if you have stuns like Grenade or the trap ability, or your party members have some for some chain stuns so that you get the full effect from the healing reduction. Or if you are getting chased or you need to knock down, etc., and you can use the Vicious Dynamite.